10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good afternoon and welcome to Season 2 of the Right Fit Podcast. I'm Darryl Jacobs, your host and ESPN Network college basketball analyst, as well as Executive Director for Rising Coaches DEI Alliance. Join me every Friday noon Eastern Time with guests who are decision-makers both in collegiate athletics and the world of professional sports. But joining me today is the Associate Vice President, Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology, also known as NJIT. Please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Lenny Kaplan. Lenny, welcome to the show.
Hey, Darryl, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I know this is the day after Thanksgiving, and you probably want to be out shopping, doing something
Absolutely
like that.
not.
Or maybe I save you from that misery, as well. But thank you again for joining us. Before we get started with the Q&A, I want you to briefly talk a little bit about your journey into collegiate athletics and why.
Well, it's kind of interesting. So I didn't go into this, come into my career looking at college athletics. I wanted to do events and run like Madison Square Garden, run Nassau Coliseum, whatever. Like that was what I wanted to do, and that's what I did a lot of through college. I majored in athletic administration, and everything I did was geared towards that. I did plenty of events. I interned twice at the Nassau Coliseum. I did those events at the Madison Square Garden. When I started my career, I started with the USTA. I did tennis tournaments around the country. I did the Lipton Championships in Key Biscayne, the Sovereign Bank in DC, the Volvo and the Pilot Pen up in New Haven, and then the US Open. So I've done all of those things, did a couple PGA events. And then I was kind of in the middle of one event ended. So I had a 5-month stint down in Florida. And my next stint was really beginning of August. So I was home, and my dean, Bernie Beglanian from St. John's University, called me. And there's always people in your life that you listen to, right? No matter whether you agree or disagree with them, you listen to what they have to say. Right. And Bernie's one of those guys. And Bernie was an awesome, awesome guy. And he's like, hey, there's a job in Manhattan College you got to look at. I'm like, well, what is it? It's like, well, it's ticket manager and operations. I'm like, I don't do tickets, and I'm from St. John. So Manhattan was always kind of like on the lower scale, right? Like that's your New York City basketball, right? Like where was Manhattan? Manhattan was like 2 wins like 2 years ago, right? And I'm coming from Final Four team at St. John's. So I went, I interviewed, it was a great interview. They spoke to me again and they offered me the job. So I took it and I said, listen, I got these other events I really want to do. Can we work it out? And Bob Burns, the athletic director at the time, said, yeah, we'll work it out. No problem. I really want you to come on board and do it. Then I started doing it. I was doing operations, which is what I wanted, events, facilities. And then the ticket thing was kind of weird, right? Like it wasn't like Madison Square Garden ticketing. It was, pre-print tickets. And at one time they were using like roll tickets. Like it was the craziest thing. And, we started doing it and I kind of liked it a little bit. And I got a chance to grow in that job, to do business, to do compliance, more operations. And when I oversaw the compliance operation, the business operation, and the facility operation using a couple of graduate assistants. And it just kind of grew, and I was there for 11 years, and I got a chance to do a lot. And then, I was young. I was 32. I said, oh, let me look at a Division II job in Jersey, right? We like the tri-state. Family was here, so you want to stay close to family. And I NJIT, and they hired me. And 22 years later, I'm still here.
Well,
and that was going to be like a 3 to 5 year job, like most AD's jobs, right? It was going to be go, fix it, and leave. Well, as we were fixing it, we kept doing new things, right? So we went from Division II to Division I. And so, again, 22 years later, I'm still here and loving every minute of it.
Well, you've done a tremendous job there, particularly with the transition from Division II to Division I, from the Atlantic Sun Conference now to the American East Conference. Talk a little bit about that process of the hiring process when you were coming in and how it may differ now compared to back then.
Well, first, the internet makes it very different, right? Back you kind of sometimes had to get a little head start on who you knew to try and get a head start on an interview. Then you had to wait for the NSA News to come out every week, right? And, you looked in the job section. That was the big one. It was a weekly paper, and you looked at it. And then you had people call on your behalf. And that still happens now, but now it's a lot different because a lot more jobs are known very quickly. So now, like in transactions, every job is listed and it's on the next day, and it's on the internet and on social media and everything else. And so back then it was you didn't find out about every job every minute, right? And athletic departments back then were much smaller, so the opportunities were slimmer, right? There just weren't enough of them. And then over time, as departments grew, and the internet came out, 15 years into my career into athletics, everything is all over the place. You have people just sending you jobs because they look, coaches especially look at, how bad your team is. If you have 2 bad years in a row, I'm getting resumes ready, right? Somebody leaves, there's a reorganization. I go to events all the time and I have people come up to me, right, and say, hey, oh, hey, that's who I am, and whatever. You really got to network. You really got to go. And the organizational component of like NACTA, which was really about ADs at the beginning, has like 17 or 18 sub-organizations in it. So we used to have like 300 people, and and now you have like 3,000 people plus at the convention, right, in 2022. So it's changed because more people know about the jobs, more people are interested in the industry. I don't think everybody understands the industry necessarily. They just think, oh, it's sports, I want to be in it. And that's how it's changed. I mean, it's really, there's a lot more people to look at to go through resumes, but you still have to rely on your network of people, and that will help you cut down the amount of resumes you get.
Something you mentioned that's very interesting. You said a lot of people don't understand collegiate athletics, which is true. This is why we are doing this type of show, so they can get a better understanding in terms of the processes, the do's and don'ts, and et cetera, with that as well. Talk about the hiring process, particularly at your institution, New Jersey Institute of Technology, also known as NJIT.
Well, when a job opens up on our end, right, we're a small school, we're a small athletic department. So we sit internally and look at, all right, here's the job we had. Is this still the job we need, right? And our next 3 or 4 steps, is this going to help us get there? And once we do that internally, it goes down. We're a state university, so most of my staff is in the union, which makes it a little more difficult, not only to change a job, but to hire somebody. So our steps are very like most state institutions. Okay, we send a request down across campus, they publish it. We have our athletic magazines, websites, whatever, we put it in, they let us do that. And then they put it in, whatever papers they're mandated to put in. And then we collect resumes and we read them. I'm still a guy that literally looks at every resume for every job, right? I'm not the hiring guy sometimes, like I let other people do most of the grunt work, but I will review everything and pick out some ones that I think that we should consider. And then, right now we have a job open in marketing and promotions, and the person who's running the search for me, my assistant AD, there was 60, 75 resumes or something like that, like the first 3 weeks. So we looked at them all, and, we narrowed it down to 14, and we met and we narrowed it down to about 8. And we'll do one thing with the internet now, right, with computers, is you can do pre-interviews instead of the old phone call, which was brutal. Right, you could do them this way, and they're a little better.
Right.
But you always got to take into account that not everybody does this well, right? Not everybody likes being on the video. Not everybody likes phone interviews, right? So, take that a little bit into account when when you're talking to people, because some people do these really well. When you meet them in person, they crash and burn, right? And sometimes it's just the opposite. And then we narrow it down, and we try and bring 3 to 5 people on campus for each job, depending how quick we're trying to move. And we interview them, and ideally we'll have somebody that kind of hits us. It's like finding your wife. It's like finding the school you want to go to. When that person hits you.
Right. Well, let's stay with the interview process. Let's talk about some of the do's and don'ts you have seen when people are interviewing, and this is important for the viewers to know, and those who are looking to get into collegiate athletics, particularly, at the Division I level. Of course, there's different level 2 and 3, but particularly at the Division I level. Talk about some of the do's and don'ts.
Well, listen, I think I can tell you, I was down at a NACTA once, and I had a job open, and people found out, so I got these little young gremlins are all coming up, oh hey, that's him, and people are sending people over to me, and some people just don't know how to act in certain situations, right? And there was one kid who we really liked and probably would have considered bringing him for an interview, and one night he's out drunk as a skunk. He's, embarrassing himself. And then, it's how you dress for an interview. It's how you present yourself. It's how you speak. And everything, again, it's kind of like a play on words here, but, it's very fitting. This is called the right fit, because when you're interviewing people, it's all about the right fit, right? Just because somebody comes from a big Power 5 school doesn't make them good for your school, right? And you have to, find some people. So when you're sitting there, it's how they dress. You have people come in and they don't know how to dress. And that's something that you have to, we spend time, in our game plan and as we're teaching kids, there's a whole dress section, right? There's an etiquette section, like when you're having lunch, right? When you're sitting having lunch and doing an interview, right? Or you're in an area where that you're going to have a chance to meet people, you shouldn't be sucking down buffalo wings, with your, you're licking off your fingers, right? Like, you have to think this through a little bit, right? You always got to keep your right hand clean. You never use your right hand, right? You're always shaking hands.
Absolutely.
Think about that a second, right? You could always hold your drink in your right hand.
Right.
But don't be picking up food where you wipe it off and shaking somebody's hand.
Right.
And never lick your fingers. People do that all the time. I understand it's a habit. Never do it. And those are like those little things that you really got to be careful of.
Well, that's very interesting, the do's and don'ts that you have experienced, particularly when you're talking about NACTA and, being in that form and, you're meeting people in different spots, during the convention.
But most of us, most ADs, right, we want our kids to succeed. We want to introduce them to people that will help them succeed. I have a rule, like when I'm at an event and there's some of my student athletes are there and even my young staff, I needed to come over, come over and say hello, introduce me at any time, right? I'll be glad to introduce you. And, then they know, and that's like another connection for them. Like, I encourage that, but I can't encourage it if you got, the barbecue sauce dripping off the end of your cheek here.
Right. Right. Let's talk about some of the industry trends. Are there any industry trends that one needs to know to stay abreast of?
We don't have enough time to discuss industry trends, right? So, the 3 or 4 right now that are super hot, obviously the in-state constitution, right? And the vote to redo the Constitution. And I have a lot of issues with that process. The Alston case ruling that now there are schools that are paying kids almost $6,000 a year just to stay eligible. Think about that, right? Just if they're eligible, they're going to get a check, right? For what's like $2,900 each semester. That's insane. We have realignment, right? Texas and Oklahoma started it, but it's trickled all the way down to the little guys, and it's still moving. That train is not done yet. And, every 5 or 6 years, it's kind of like a cleansing. You ever watch The Godfather? Right? Like every 5 or 6 years, there's got to be a battle where they're all killing each other. Mm-hmm. This is kind of like where we eat our own a little bit, right? Like it's kind of like that. What's another one? The National Labor Relations Board, right? Kind of indicating that the Power 5 basketball and football players are employees, right? And that wasn't an official ruling. That was like an opinion piece. But, that's something that we're going to have to play out a little bit and see what happens.
Well, you're bringing up a lot of like the national relations, the boards and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people don't know about that, particularly the Alston case. Yeah. A lot of you probably just shed some light to a lot of people regarding those type of issues and those industry trends that you're talking about. Lenny, let's go to a commercial break. I got to pay some bills, buddy. And we'll come back here on The Right Fit with Lenny Kaplan, Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The Right Fit podcast is brought to you by Rising Coaches Search and Consulting. Tired of spending what seems like all of your time and budget filling coaching vacancies? Let Rising Coaches Search and Consulting handle your next coaching search. Our process is simple. We identify, vet, and recruit a talented and diverse group of professionals that fits your institution's profile. All for a low price that we guarantee will beat our competitions. Plus, all of your searches will be handled by former coaches, meaning we will get the best possible insight on all of your candidates, and you'll get the perspective that only a former coach could provide. For testimonials, a full client list, or more information, please visit risingcoaches.com.
Welcome back to The Right Fit. I'm your host, Daryl Jacobs, and today we have Associate Vice President, Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology, Mr. Lenny Kaplan. Let's talk about the differences between hiring a coach and hiring an administrator. And I want you to go in detail if you can, because there's a distinct difference there.
Well, with coaches, their resume is very public. Okay. So if you're hiring a former head coach, right, or you're hiring an assistant, where are they coming from? What's the kind of program they're coming from, right? Does it have a good culture, right? Are there a lot of kids jumping ship over the last 2 or 3 years, right? Are there kids getting arrested? Are there kids being suspended? And all this stuff is public, right? Like we read all the time and all of our daily applications. This person's suspended because he did DUI. This person's suspended because he hit his girlfriend. This person failed out of school. So when you're looking at coaches, right, you're looking a lot of times, sometimes the kids they brought in, right? You're looking at their academics and what the school is rated and how smart their kids are. You're looking at their record, right, of the team, You're looking at their history, because again, with assistant coaches, who else are they learning from, right? We're talking about the mentors and the people, right? You don't want people that come from programs that don't have good reputations, even if they're winning, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's about you. You have to understand who you are, right? So we have to understand who is going to help take NJIT, make the best NJIT they can be. I'm not going to be Gonzaga, right? I'm not a mid-major that's going to get that high, right? But I can be better than a lot of other mid-majors in the region, and we need to be competitive. And our goal, as we discussed kind of off air, is win in the league. And who's going to help me bring in the right kids? I'm a STEM university, Daryl. There's only 34 STEM universities in the country. Okay. I have a very different kid than what a small liberal arts school, in Oklahoma or Massachusetts or Washington bring in, right? It's a different kind of kid. It's a different kid they can get in, and it's different majors of study. Our kids, we still have a lot of kids, even on basketball, that are in engineering, right? That are in the STEM majors. I got a chemistry kid. I got an electrical engineering kid. I got a computer science kid. It's different, and our academics are hard. We don't have those simple classes that kind of let them skate by. They're taking the same classes that our other kids are getting, And so when you're looking at coaches, you're bringing in people that have very public resumes, even if they're not their own, right? And although you technically by law shouldn't be calling the university they've come from, right, directly, if they've applied for your job and maybe their head coach doesn't know, you don't know who knows that they've applied for the job. But a lot in our industry, we get all these calls, right? And I can tell you the person with the most calls does not always win. Okay. The person who has the most people call does not always win. And it's not always the most impressive people that call that win. I mean, it's great getting a call. When I was at Manhattan College, we had a good run, Rick Pitino's assistants. We had, Dean Smith used to call, and that's great, right? But they have to really understand who you were, right? And, in some of their cases, some of these big coaches call and some of their coaches will fit and some of their coaches won't. We've had big time, coaches call at Manhattan, I remember. And when their guy called, it just wasn't a good fit, right? It's great to get a guy from an AC school, but if not, we interviewed a guy at NJIT, Power 5 guy, an assistant, who was went through school as a major. He was an all-league academic kid where he came from, right? He's a tri-state area kid. And as we're talking, right, he passed the first interview phase, and it was a final 3, and he blew it. I mean, blew it. Talking about things that we can't do here at NJIT. I can't just at the time, and now I have a new facility, so it's a little different. But at the time, I couldn't throw everybody out of the gym, right? Where you have it, you couldn't practice only from 2 to 4 because that's the optimal practice time, right? Our class system doesn't work that way, right? I don't care what majors you're in, it doesn't work that way. And there are people who just talk themselves way out of jobs. So, as you're sitting there looking at the coaches, it's, you look at their current team, their past team, whether they're head or assistant coaches. You look at disciplinary issues, the kind of kids they're bringing in, right? All the information now was available, right? So back then you really had to rely, 20 years ago, you talked about what was it like years ago? Back then you always had to rely on people who knew. So I couldn't find out anything about from Oklahoma, right? Unless you really dug. Now everything is kind of, really accessible. Administrators, right? It's also a little different because it's like the record is public. Okay, but you got to look at what they did and what they're responsible for. We all, all put on their resumes. Well, they did this. They really, assisted in the promotions department. Did they get to run this whole program by themselves, right? And again, dig down a little bit. You on phone to people that like, hey, what goes on over there? Did this work not work? And you find people that kind of everyone stretches, right? That but there's difference of stretching a little bit and then being you're just coming up with it doesn't make any sense.
We'll take a commercial break and come back. We seem to have lost Mr. Kaplan here. You're here with the Right Fit, Daryl Jacobs. We'll be back.
The Right Fit podcast is brought to you by Rising Coaches Search and Consulting. Tired of spending what seems like all of your time and budget filling coaching vacancies? Let Rising Coaches Search and Consulting handle your next coaching search. Our process is simple. We identify, vet, and recruit a talented and diverse group of professionals that fits your institution's profile, all for a low price that we guarantee will beat our competitions. Plus, all of your searches will be handled by former coaches, meaning we will get the best possible insight on all of your candidates, and you'll get the perspective that only a former coach could provide. For testimonials, a full client list, or more information, please visit risingcoaches.com.
We're back with Lenny Kaplan, Associate Vice President, Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology. We have a little bit of technical difficulties, so hopefully we can get him back on very quickly. Again, join us every Friday, noon Eastern time, here at the Right Fit, where we'll be talking to decision makers both in collegiate athletics and professional sports, as we let Mr. Kaplan deal with his technical difficulties. It is storming where he's at, so he did inform me of that as well. So, and he's trying to come back in. If you have any questions, please put them up in the comment box, and we can potentially let Mr. Kaplan answer those questions. So as he continues to navigate, I can see him moving around a little bit.
I thought I was time. I got like 4 bars here.
Okay. Yeah, you're going in and out a little bit, as well. So hopefully you can get that rectified.
Okay.
Lenny, if you want to, go out and come back in, that'll be great.
Okay.
You're here at Right Fit with Daryl Jacobs. Our guest today is Lenny Kaplan, Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, so I had him leave the studio, our virtual studio, and he's going to come back in. Again, join us every Friday, noon Eastern time, where I'll be with some exciting guests who are decision makers in both the world of sports and the collegiate athletic realm, as well as professional sports as well. Let me welcome back in Mr. Lenny Kaplan.
Hope this works.
Oh, I hope so as well. You're looking good thus far. Hopefully we can get you going here. We'll proceed with that. We were talking about the hiring process, the difference between hiring a head coach in any particular sport, as well as hiring an athletic administrator. And you were talking about the men's basketball coach or women's basketball coach or any coach that's applying for a position within your department, and then you were going to talk a little bit about the athletic administration side.
But you're looking about
Yeah, we're still having some technical difficulties as well. Let's do this, Lenny. Let's stop it. Let's try to see if you can come back in. I'm going to stop the stream here. We apologize for the technical difficulties. These things happen. It's storming where he's at. So we welcome to the world of technology, and we'll try to come right back with Mr. Lenny Kaplan, Associate Vice President, Director of Athletics at New Jersey Institute of Technology, also known as NJIT, and part of the American East Conference.